The freezing rain was blowing sideways across the VIP marina when the ceramic cup shattered against the wet concrete, sending hot tea flying into the icy wind. "Get out of here. I don't care if you're freezing. If you don't have the membership fee, you don't stand on my dock. People like you make this place look like a dumpster." The man yelling was wearing a custom-tailored suit that cost more than most people make in an entire year. He sneered, violently kicking the broken shards of the teacup away. Standing in front of him, taking the absolute brunt of the storm, was a man in a cheap, soaked delivery jacket. He was holding his 7-year-old daughter tight against his chest, trying to shield her from the bitter wind. The little girl was shivering uncontrollably, crying from the biting cold and the sudden aggression. Dozens of people were sitting inside the warm, glass-enclosed yacht club, watching the scene unfold. Nobody stepped forward. The marina security staff just looked away, intimidated by the wealthy man's VIP status. But then, a figure stepped out from the shadow of the bait shop. It was Rose. She was a young orphan who lived in the alleyways near the docks, wearing clothes stained with mud and clay. Without a second thought, she walked right up to the wealthy man, placing her thin frame squarely between him and the freezing father and daughter. A single bowl of soup, shared in a freezing storm, can light a fire that warms an entire lifetime. Subscribe to our channel today to witness real miracles, and if you believe in the power of human kindness, leave a prayer in the comments. I pray the Lord blesses and warms every soul that knows how to share and love. Rose didn't have money, and she certainly didn't have status, but she had a fierce protective instinct. For years, she had survived by scavenging the nearby beaches and dumpsters for broken pieces of pottery. She would take discarded trash and spend hours in her tiny, drafty shack, painstakingly grinding and fixing the shards, using a unique celadon glazing technique she had taught herself from old library books. Her hands were always covered in tiny cuts and calluses, her fingernails permanently stained, but her spirit was completely unbroken. She firmly believed that no matter how shattered something was, with enough patience and care, it could be made whole again. What neither Rose nor the arrogant rich man knew was the true identity of the shivering delivery driver. His name was Richard. He wasn't a desperate father delivering food to make ends meet. He was actually a billionaire, the secretive founder of the most prestigious antique restoration and royal auction empire in the country. He had deliberately brought his daughter out into the harsh elements today, dressed in thrift store clothes. It was a brutal, but deeply necessary lesson. Growing up in extreme privilege, his daughter was sheltered. Richard wanted to show her the harsh reality of how the world treats you when they think you have absolutely nothing, and more importantly, to teach her how to spot genuine character in the darkest of times. The wealthy man, a newly minted real estate developer who had just leased a massive yacht and was desperate to show off his new status, wasn't done asserting his dominance. He looked at Rose's dirty hands and the small, worn canvas bag of broken ceramics she carried over her shoulder. "What are you supposed to be? The trash collector?" he mocked, his voice cutting harshly through the wind. "Look at this absolute garbage." He stepped forward and kicked her bag, sending a few beautifully mended celadon pieces spilling out into the oily puddles on the concrete. "You're just as pathetic as this delivery guy. I'm calling security right now to have all three of you thrown out by the dumpsters where you belong. You're polluting my view." The wind howled louder, dropping the temperature even further. Richard held his daughter closer. He was watching everything with a quiet, intense gaze, calculating every single move, mapping out exactly who these people were. Rose looked down at her ruined work in the puddle, then up at the little girl, whose lips were starting to turn a dangerous shade of blue. Rose had a choice to make. Tucked safely inside her coat was a small, dented thermos of hot chicken soup. It was the only warm meal she had been able to afford this week. If she gave it away, she would be facing the freezing night, completely empty-handed, hungry, and cold. She didn't even hesitate. Rose completely ignored the rich man's taunts. She knelt down in the freezing mud. Right in front of the little girl, she took off her thick, oversized wool coat, her only real protection against the storm, and wrapped it gently around the shivering child. Then, she opened her bag, pulled out the thermos, and handed it directly to the father. "Take this," she said softly, her teeth chattering. "Please, just let the little girl drink something warm before she gets sick. It's not much, but it will help." Richard took the thermos, his piercing eyes locking onto Rose's. He didn't say a word, but the depth of observation in his gaze was heavy with silent realization. Rose then turned her attention to the wet concrete. Her bare hands were shaking violently from the cold. But she began to carefully pick up the shattered pieces of the teacup the rich man had knocked out of Richard's hands earlier. "I know it's broken," she whispered to Richard, wiping freezing rain from her face. "But I know a way to fix things like this. I can mend it with my celadon glaze. I promise, I'll make it beautiful again for you." A small act of sacrifice was about to wake up a sleeping giant. Before you see the truth hidden beneath that soaked delivery jacket, write this prayer in the comments. I pray the Lord blesses and warms every soul that knows how to share and love. The wealthy man watched this display of raw compassion and scoffed loudly. It offended him deeply. It made a mockery of the financial power he thought he had over them. "You really think some dirty soup and a few pieces of garbage are going to save you?" He spat, his face twisted in disgust. He took a heavy, deliberate step forward, aiming his expensive leather shoe right at the little girl's trembling hands, fully intending to kick the hot soup directly into the mud. He never made contact. Before the expensive leather shoe could even graze the thermos, a hand shot out and gripped the man's ankle in midair. It wasn't a desperate, struggling grab. It was a grip of absolute, unforgiving steel. Richard slowly stood up, pushing the man's leg back with enough calculated force to make him stumble backward and fall hard onto the wet concrete. The meek, submissive posture of a struggling delivery driver was completely gone. In its place stood a man who radiated cold, terrifying authority. "Are you out of your mind?" the wealthy man screamed, scrambling to his feet, his custom suit now heavily smeared with grease and mud. "Security, get this absolute trash off my dock right now. I want them arrested." But the marina security guards were no longer looking at him. Their radios were suddenly buzzing with panicked voices. Their eyes were fixed on the main entrance of the private pier. Cutting through the heavy, blinding rain, a convoy of 4 matte black armored SUVs pulled up directly onto the restricted VIP zone, ignoring every single traffic protocol. The heavy doors swung open simultaneously. A dozen men in dark, tailored suits stepped out into the storm, completely ignoring the freezing rain beating down on them. Leading the group was the port director himself, a man who usually only dealt with foreign dignitaries and elite politicians. The director ran forward, practically slipping on the wet concrete in his haste, and stopped right in front of Richard. He bowed at a deep, perfect 90-degree angle, his voice trembling over the sound of the storm. "Mr. Chairman, we apologize for the delay. The severe weather caused a slight detour in the convoy." The entire marina went dead silent. The wealthy man froze in place, his mouth hanging slightly open. The arrogant sneer vanished from his face in a fraction of a second, replaced by a sickening pale color. "Chairman?" he whispered, his voice cracking. He looked wildly at the soaked delivery jacket, then at the massive fleet of armored cars, and finally at the port director, who was still bowing respectfully in the freezing rain. Richard didn't even acknowledge the terrified real estate developer. He knelt back down into the mud, carefully picking up the small, mended piece of celadon pottery that Rose had just fixed. He turned it over in his bare hand, examining the intricate, glowing green seams, where the broken edges met flawlessly. "For a decade, my global acquisition team has spent millions of dollars trying to find someone who still understands this exact, authentic royal glazing technique. From the 12th century, he looked up at Rose, the harshness in his eyes softening completely. And yet, here it is, sitting in a freezing puddle. Crafted by a brave young woman, who gave her very last meal to a shivering child, Richard stood up and finally turned his attention back to the wealthy man, who was now visibly shaking, stepping backward toward the edge of the dock. You called her trash. You called her beautiful, painstaking work, garbage. You thought money gave you the right to strip away human dignity. Richard pulled a sleek, waterproof phone from his pocket and handed it to his lead executive. Cancel his yacht lease immediately. Revoke his VIP status across all our global properties and affiliate networks. And make sure every major bank in this financial district knows exactly how this man treats the vulnerable when he thinks no one has the power to stop him. The wealthy man collapsed to his knees, right there in the mud. The reality of his complete financial and social ruin, crashing down on him harder than the raging storm. He tried to stammer an apology, but the guards immediately stepped in, blocking him from getting anywhere near Richard or Rose. But Richard was already walking away from the pathetic display. He gently wrapped his own dry, cashmere-lined jacket from the SUV around Rose's freezing, trembling shoulders. He didn't just pay her back for the bowl of soup. That very afternoon, Richard purchased the entire marina outright in a cash transaction. He immediately ordered the demolition of the exclusive elitist yacht club. In its place, he commissioned the construction of the Rose Heritage and Arts Foundation. It was to be a fully funded global scholarship center, designed specifically to rescue orphans and teach them the priceless art of antique restoration. The moment when a miracle touches the life of the vulnerable always leaves us breathless. Please comment, I pray the Lord blesses and warms every soul that knows how to share and love, because what happened next was straight out of a modern fairy tale. Under the brilliant, clear night sky, aboard a massive superyacht surrounded by a spectacular fireworks display, Richard knelt down on one knee. He wasn't kneeling as a billionaire CEO, but as a deeply grateful father who had found the purest heart in the world. He held out his family's antique crest ring, asking Rose to share her incredible life with them forever. When we give away our warmth in the middle of life's bitter storms, destiny has a way of returning a whole sky full of radiant stars. The fathers who bravely plant seeds of love and resilience will always reap the most beautiful, unimaginable miracles. If this story gave you strength today, please subscribe to our channel so you never miss another incredible journey. And don't forget to leave one final prayer below. I pray the Lord blesses and warms every soul that knows how to share and love. We will see you in the next video.